What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and day 11 of training camp is complete, which means once again we've had another subpar performance from Justin Fields, which we'll dive into, and injuries continue to kind of pile up a bit here as we get additional details. But the good news is on both of those fronts, Aaron Glenn has repeated on multiple occasions now that in regards to the injuries, there's not a huge concern, and in regards to Justin Fields, it's not a major concern. And Robbie Sable also drops more gems from his perspective on what's contributing to some of these, downtrodden performances from Fields. With that said, though, let's get into some of the housekeeping items when it comes to the injury front. And before we go through the list of injuries here, I will say a lot of the comments that I've seen, whether it's been my video or others, about a lot of players having glass bodies here, I will say that couldn't be farther from the truth, right? This is the most intense practice that many of these guys have experienced since what they've mentioned in their own press interviews, high school days, maybe early college, or just college in general, depending on where they went to school at. So for us wanting to become a physical defense, and as I think Aaron Glenn excellently pointed out, callousing ourselves to where these, let's call them superficial injuries in training camp don't become lingering or long-term issues over the course of the regular season. This is bound to help us out, right? So short-term pain and setbacks for long-term rewards in this particular situation. But with that said, Mason Taylor, he's been classified with a high ankle sprain, didn't practice. Byron Cowart, this one does suck just because he has been marked as the starter next to Quinnen early, and I wouldn't imagine this written in pen, right? Obviously, it was the unofficial depth chart, but still, you want to make sure that you can solidify and land that spot permanently, and you never know who ends up breaking out or having a string of good practices here and knock somebody off of their totem pole. Will McDonald, back spasms, that's going to be one that we want to keep an eye on. Azareye'h Thomas left with a shoulder, and then we had two early leaves from practice. Excuse me, one with Breece Hall, the other one for Malachi Moore. And again, in all of these situations, Aaron Glenn's already deemed that he's not overly concerned about any of these. And if anything changes, of course, he'll let us know. But as of now, just take it as the necessary lumps and bruises that the team needs to take in terms of creating and consistently demoing that play style that we've heard Aaron Glenn chat about here. Now, the theme for the day overall, offensively, out of sync. Justin Fields still working through what it looks like operating out of the passing game, still adjusting to how to execute this scheme and really what he's being asked to do as a passer, considering the limitations of the defense, not playing him as you would imagine a regular defense would in a game setting, as much as they're trying to recreate that, right? And that's just going to be different by nature of not being able to hit him, by nature of them extending plays when there would be sacks and different things of that nature. So it's a different mentality for as much as they try to get him prepped, but something he's going to have to try to work through. And then defensively, that generally means, from our experience, that they've been able to go out there and dominate, and this has been another day. I think easily you can look back and say the last 3 or 4 practices have been ones where the defense has arguably won pretty hand over fist, regardless of kind of what Aaron Glenn's been saying. And it's been a little bit cheek and tongue, if you will, where he's been referencing the offense is winning their days, the defense is winning theirs, when it feels like the offense hasn't necessarily won anything in about a week or a week and a half or so now. But I did like Justin Fields' commentary about it's going to be about how the offense bounces back, right? Now, you actually have to go out there and perform the bounce back. Otherwise, you start to lose grace and integrity with, even saying the right things that are supposed to get said. But we'll see how it pans out. Ultimately, 3 takeaways by the defense against the starting unit. Plenty more that's happening with the depth players that are going on. And a couple more points about Justin Fields here, right? I won't hype into what actually happened for him for the day. Just know it was pretty bad, as seen by some of these tweets from Connor Hughes over what's happened over the course of the last 3 days, in addition to this particular practice. But he mentioned, when asked about preseason, he would like to see the team take the field at least once in each preseason game, at least for a series, right? Get out there, go through the motions of calling a game versus the other a new defense, in addition to seeing what Tanner Engstrand and company is going to look like in a game setting, right? A game scenario, game foundation. And I think from everything I've seen with Aaron Glenn, he's been putting his team in a bunch of different settings, not only just the team periods and extended stretches there, but even in today's practice, for example, where he had them starting at a deficit at the 1 yard line, at our own 1 yard line, and needing to make get down the field. Huge plus. We're taking lumps and it doesn't look good right now, but this will be a situation that when we do inevitably have it occur at some point in the regular season, they have some experiences they can go back and call on in terms of what worked, what didn't, or some things that they seen were obviously not quite fine-tuned up enough, as we've heard Alan Lazard chat about. Now, Robbie Sable's perspective here as well, and then we'll get into some of the player breakdowns and highlights and lowlights here. But Robbie Sable added to the context of what he was mentioning yesterday, where because the defense isn't playing the way they necessarily would against a normal dual threat quarterback, and the situation that Justin Fields finds himself in with not only this new scheme, but the lack of playmakers behind Garrett Wilson and anyone not named the running backs and or Mason Taylor, which is enough weapons, I would say, to at least hold a acceptable offense. But specific to the wide receiver room, it's going to be hard for him to do anything more than moving on from just his primary read. And what he highlighted was that over the course of his career, when we've seen Justin Fields looking his best, it's been because he's essentially been, whether it's a one-read system or a one-read play, he's been able to understand what's going on with his primary target and then utilize his legs to either drift and extend to make plays through the air, or he's utilized his legs to damaging effect by rushing, right? And pretty much any time that we've seen or heard the success throughout camp here, it feels like that's been the same thing. Outside of some of the bombs that he's been able to throw, there hasn't necessarily been a ton of touch passes, a ton of darts that he's necessarily dropping. Even in some of the clips that have been shared, some of those passes look like hospital balls when it comes to like these boundary throws, and even potentially some over the middle of the field. And there's going to be a good amount of that in any quarterback's game, right? But it's going to be something people hype on with Justin Fields, again, just because the lack of overall quality passing play from him specifically. But with him being in a one-read system, which is what Tanner Engstrand is essentially going to have to operate here for him, and with him not being able to utilize that rushing threat as he would in a normal game setting, it creates maybe some havoc for Justin Fields, right? There's maybe some panic, some uncertainty, some confident issues in that this isn't his quite the normal play style, right? And we've heard Aaron Glenn mention early on that he wants to allow him to play quarterback. And I love that Robbie Sable pointed out that many of us, and maybe even the reporters, took that as we're going to convert him to a pocket quarterback. And maybe that shouldn't be the case and or isn't happening from what we're seeing on the field, right? There's two different schools of thoughts in my mind that can happen here. There is, by what Aaron Glenn means when he says let him play quarterback, right? One is, we understand when he's been at his best, much to what Robbie Sable pointed out, and or any additional context the coaching staff has. We feel like this set of circumstances makes him the best quarterback that he could be, right? And anybody with a shred of common sense will tell you the legs have to be a part of this, right? Implementing him as a rusher is absolutely necessary, regardless of the risk of injury. It's just how he operates at this point in time in his career. You're going to have to lean into that, right? And so even if it ends up dumbing down maybe the playbook and or the offense, you end up being able to utilize the best attributes of your current genetic roster makeup, right? Which is elite wide receiver 1 in Garrett, what looks like should be a plus security blanket in Mason Taylor. And then a lot of this is going to be dependent on Justin Fields in terms of being able to utilize his legs, but also the rushing attack. And if the ground game suffers, then the entire offense is going to suffer, because that means more pressure is going to be on Justin Fields. There's going to be more scenarios where we're going to be forcing him to have to pass. And consistent, like, if we're talking about the playbook being 120, 150 plays, and because of Justin Fields' limitations and the roster limitations, let's just say we're paring it down to 80, 90 plays, right? 60 to 70, maybe 75 plays on any given, Sunday. There's not a lot of variance there, right? So then it becomes about fine-tuning and maybe building some manipulation off of plays that you've seen work in game time settings now, so that data is going to look a lot different than what you've seen in practice. That's going to be one thing. The other path is you're forcing Justin Fields to become that pocket passer, right? And the results haven't been great if what we're hearing from practice is essentially what's going on now. And there's two ways to look at that. One, he's going to learn and grow from the pains early, and the good news will be it's happening in training camp, whereas the regular season games or preseason, it'll be a little bit more of a concerning issue. But it's ultimately going to help him in the long term as well, right? And we're still talking about, this being a 1-year rental, a 2-year, trial basis run, if you will, to prove enough that he can be that quarterback of the future for the Jets. But all of that aside, ultimately, Justin Fields does need to improve his level of play, right? And I'm curious just about just how that gets done, right? You hear coaching staffs talk all the time about operating a scheme or being able to change and adjust the scheme to work what works really best based on the talent that they have in that given season. And for Engstrom, right out of the gate, this is going to be the truest test of that scenario, of course, with Aaron Glenn's graces and blessings. But we'll see how all of this ultimately pans out. I'm not willing to say the season is over or go overboard and extremely beyond with anything that's happening with Justin Fields, unless we get a 0 passes completed day or something insane like that. We've seen the other end of the spectrum for him as well, where he started practice by ripping off 12 completed passes, right? So there's that there to his game, and we'll just have to hope that the consistency gets a little bit better here, with us looking at about a month and a half to go before the games come and start actually mattering, right? Now, let's go through the offense first. Isaiah Davis, he was highlighted, major gains. Same thing with Kenny Nwangwu. Huge plus for me, right? I think anytime, I don't know if there's been a single practice, once again, where the running backs haven't been highlighted as having something consistent, solid, and or outstanding going for them. So even having someone like Kenny Nwangwu stepping up, who I would hope wins the kick return job, huge plus, not just for the depth of the run, but of course for the trio that we're all excited to see. Arian Smith, he had a dropped deep ball from Adrian Martinez, which ended up being a broken play that Martinez was able to make the most out of. There's been a few more drops, I want to say, in the last week or so for him, but overall, I think he's done enough, and we're going to have to see it in preseason. Many people are going to have to see it throughout the entirety of the regular season, but I'm comfortable saying right now I've seen or heard enough from Smith here, Arian Smith, to say that I don't think he's completely eliminated or nullified his hands issue, but he's significantly improved them to where he should be a serviceable option for an offense that's going to be sorely looking for some kind of secondary help in that receiver room. And I'm very proud of the dude. I think he's taken huge developmental leaps over the course of this season, and there's still a ton more for him to go. So awesome there. Ontario Wilson got a highlight sideline catch from Brady Brook. And then after that, everything was essentially the defensive show here, right? Brandon Stevens still having a very, very strong camp as of about 2 weeks ago. He had a pass breakup versus Tyler Johnson. He also snagged himself an interception off a tip from Jeremy Ruckert, who it was either just slightly too high of a pass or maybe too hard of a bullet that came his way, and he couldn't just quite get it in with it coming off his fingertips. MC2 got himself a pass breakup versus Garrett Wilson. Andre Sisco came up with an interception where Justin Fields was trying to target Braylon Allen. I'm assuming coming out into the flats or something similar of that nature. Tony Adams got an interception. This was off another tip from Sauce having a pass breakup against Josh Reynolds. Both of these came against Justin Fields, and all of these situations actually, Brandon Stevens, Andre Sisco, Tony Adams, they all came against Justin Fields, the way I understand it. And then Tyler Barrett, a name that we haven't heard so far, but the rookie was able to flash today with 2 sacks, one against Justin Fields, one against Adrian Martinez. And then Rashad Weaver, who we heard a lot about earlier on, had himself a sack against Justin Fields too. So overall, I think there's this rut that Justin Fields is in, and we need to see how he goes about being able to work his way out of this, right? So far, the receivers have been saying all of the right things. I'm waiting to hear from Garrett Wilson again because I think he does one of the better jobs, if not the best jobs, from the weapons group in terms of just being objective and honest about how he feels things are going and giving his interpretation about what's causing the struggles. And from all accounts that I can see, people are still praising some of the passing concepts that Tanner Engstrand is putting together. Justin Fields isn't just executing these at a high level so far. So we'll see what happens there. Let me know what your guys' commentary and thoughts are. As always, appreciate the support, and I'll catch you guys again. Peace.